Hello guys, welcome back. I'm your friend InsideXO. In the last video, we have talked about how can we make a Twitter-like last view, a simple view. For now, we are going to go to a deeper level because everybody uses Twitter, and everybody knows that Twitter is not just a single text last. If you go to Twitter, you see a list of text at the first view as a homepage. That's fine, but when you get into it, if you click one of the tweets, you see a list of other tweets, and if you click one of the other tweets, if it gets some else who comments out below this tweet, you will get another list of tweets. For example, here's a tweet, and under this tweet we get a bunch of other tweets. And if we click one of them, you'll see another bunch of tweets. So for the Twitter, it kind of like this infinite list of list. So what we need to do here is to make such a system to list those data just like Twitter does, or just like Twitter did. So for here, I will just create a class called my Twitter. At the beginning, it doesn't have anything, but then we need to create some functions. For example, get Twitter. Oh, I think this is kind of boring. I shouldn't do this by myself. Here we go. I used here's a letter code problem that I have solved before. We may probably use the same logic to create our own backend program. Okay, in my Telegram group, I just got the old code that I wrote. Let's do a copy, then paste it here. So from this class, what can we get from it? First, we define a Twitter object. Then we post a Twitter with a user ID and Twitter ID. Then we can news feed for one user, and we can do a follow or unfollow. But that's not what I want. So let's forget about it, since the whole system of my Twitter is only about me, one user. So at the beginning, we should have all messages. And for each one, at the first, we need to have a list of tweets. That's all those tweets that we can have. Then we need to create a function called add tweet or post tweet. It's the same thing for me. For this function, it will take. Let's say for now, I just want to make it as simple as possible. So for now, you should have an ID. Then you should have a content. Then we say all tweets that append. Then we should have a display function. Define get. Probably we do not need that. Now let's do a test. First, we define a my Twitter instance. Then we say my Twitter that post a tweet with an ID of 1 with a content of hi. In the end, we say Twitter that all tweets. Well, we get an error because we didn't add the self to our class function. But now everything should be fine. All tweets isn't defined. Okay, here we should say self that. Alright, now we got it right in here. For tweet, if we want to let all those tweets listed to each other one by one, this tweet, this kind of Twitter is a child of this tweet. So for the big trait in the above, it has a bunch of child traits up in the bottom. So this is a very clear data structure. I should have a keyword called children, and at the beginning should be an empty last. You know what? I didn't even want to manually handle the ID by myself. So I'm gonna say at the beginning the ID equal to 0. And for each time if we add a new tweeter, I just call the self.id. Let's do this. Self.id plus equal to 1. So for each time the ID will increase itself. We don't have to manually handle it by ourselves anymore. Alright, so for now we get something like this. If we add more, for example, we add hi and you guys. Oh, we get something like this. That's not correct. Yes, I think this shouldn't be happening to us. Why it's keeping increased elements inside of that. Okay, for now it's working successfully. So the initiate function is necessary if we want to make it more accurate, just work as we expected. Otherwise, if you do something like this, things can go wrong in a very unexpected way. Okay, for now, all we have is the post trait, but it's not enough. Sometimes we want to post a tweet under someone else's Twitter. Yeah. So how can we do that? What kind of length we should give to this function? So I say replay Twitter. For this function, it will take first the ID. So tweet ID you replay to. I should be an integer. Then it's a content. Okay, for this function, how it should be. You know what? When you look at this kind of data structure, you just think about the MongoDB. If you are using MongoDB, you can very easily do some query with the ID equal to whatever. That could be the best way for this kind of problem. But for now, since we are using the built-in Python functions, this can be a little bit tricky. For example, all we could do is the hard way. Let's say for each one in the self.all traits, if each the ID equal to the trait ID you reply to, then we do a replacement or something like that. So we say self.all traits with indexed and with the children that append what? Append this content, of course. Well, did you really need that context? No, you don't. You just need to add an ID to it. So at the beginning, at the post function, we should at least return the ID so that we could know the ID. So in here, what we could do is we call the post trait function. We feed the content in. In this case, we get a new ID. And for this trait ID, we're gonna add it inside of others tweeters children. Did you understand that? Okay. So for now, if we add more, like you say, my Twitter, post Twitter to, let's say, the Twitter ID equal to 2, and the new message would be, this is still not that intuitive. Let's say the first man just said hi. The second man, you could say hello, and there's a third man who just came in and said something to the second man. It says, "Nice to meet you." That's right. We got an error. Oh, this should be replay traits. Okay, let's run it again. And for now, you can say for the first tweet, for the first post, you got an ID of 1, and it says hi, it has 0 children. For the second one, it has ID 2, it has a content hello, it has children of 3. Why it has a children? Why it has a child? Well, it's simply because someone else replay the Twitter under the ID 2, and the content what we can get is 3. Nice to meet you. Okay, this is basically, I guess, the basic structure for all applications. But there has something else that we need to do. For example, just one function, the last one. Let's say we need to get a tweet. By what? By giving me a tweet ID. So we are done. Now we could get our Twitter by, well, what's the problem? By giving it an ID. For example, if I want to get the second one, I could do this, and bang, I could get the second ID. I could get the second Twitter by doing this. So this is a basic class for our backend Twitter. You know, in the real life, there get a lot of problems. For example, here we won't use a built-in data structure, and we won't save the data in the memory. That won't work. We will save it in a database. And for those functions, if we wrote it in Python, that means we will have a server service, and we will do some communication between the flighter and the server. That can be a lot of work to do, and I won't do it. So yeah, because it's just too much work to do, I won't do it. And since this is my personal application and it's an Android application, so I won't do that. So instead, I will implement those logics with a flighter, with a Dart programming language. I will implement this Python class inside of the flighter, okay? And that's what we are going to do in the next video. Anyway, this is the end of task 3. We have made it. Congratulations, guys. We only need just 2 more videos, then we'll reach the success. So goodbye. I will see you in the next video.